Hello and welcome back to another video on the channel. Welcome back to Mukba 11. Today we will be discussing the future of Jadon Sancho. Where is he most likely to end up? And if he was to stay at Man United, what will be the pros and cons? And also, where did it go wrong for him at Man United? Now, first of all, obviously Jadon Sancho, he's part of the bomb squad, which includes Alejandro Garnacho, Marcus Rashford, Anthony and Tyrell Malacia, one of whom has already left to Barca, another one who's most likely going to Chelsea, another one who's most likely going to Betis. The situation with Malacia is not really well known. Now, Jadon Sancho, if we're being honest, until today, there was no real offers since Galatasaray and Juventus earlier in the transfer window, where obviously Galatasaray, they opted to sign Leroy Sané and paid big money for Victor Osimhen, and now they're focusing on goalkeepers. Whereas with Juve, it was more the contract terms, etc. But today, there has been news coming out that Borussia Dortmund are working on a deal for Jadon Sancho. Plettenberg has reported Borussia Dortmund are still working on a transfer for Jadon Sancho and are exploring the possibility of a third return. Talks are ongoing. Sebastian Kehl did not deny Dortmund's interest in Sancho yesterday. Speaking to Sky Sports, he said, "We have various targets. We will still do something. We have a few days left." Obviously not ruling out any potential moves for Jadon Sancho there. Now, also Jadon Sancho, one key thing to remember is he didn't have a problem with Ruben Amorim, so I don't think him staying would be as bad as people make it out to be. And Ruben Amorim obviously made it clear that any players that they do not offload, they will be integrated back into the team. Obviously, the reintegration will be more likely for Sancho, Anthony and Malacia than it will be for Rashford, who's already left, and Alejandro Garnacho, who have public problems with Ruben Amorim. Let's delve into the history of Jadon Sancho and how tough his time at Man United was so far, and also some of the reasons as to why it didn't work out for him. So we have to go back all the way to 2021-22 season. Obviously, Man United just came off a season where they finished second in the league, where they were top in January, and also lost the Europa League final in disastrous fashion, conceding 11 penalty goals, scoring 10. Obviously, De Gea missed a penalty, and in general, to be honest, we should have probably won the game in the 90 minutes. But yeah, that's off topic. We signed Jadon Sancho. He was signed by Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and Jadon Sancho just came off a season where he had 15 goals and 18 assists, a 33 GA season, by the way, and also that was not his best season either. I don't even think that was his second best season either, if I'm not 100% mistaken. Obviously, Jadon Sancho, he had no preseason under Solskjaer, and also he just came off a Euros where he got abused, like racially abused, alongside other players like Bukayo Saka, who managed to kick on, and Marcus Rashford, who went on to have a surgery and then had I would say, his worst season ever in his entire career. Obviously, that made it a bit more difficult for Jadon Sancho. To be honest with you, as the season went by, while Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was here, he played all right to well in the very limited minutes that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer gave him. Obviously, that's due to the fact that we signed Cristiano Ronaldo. We had Rashford as well, Martial, Cavani, and we also had Mason Greenwood at the time as well, who was, I would say, probably our best attacker at that stage. Obviously, the guy that signed him, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, he got sacked 3 months into the season, and he was replaced by interim Michael Carrick before being replaced by another interim in Ralf Rangnick. Now, to be super honest with you, I think under Michael Carrick, he probably had his best spell at Man United, excluding the preseason that he had with Ten Hag in 23-24. I think, obviously, that game against Villarreal, he was just majestic. He topped it off with a fantastic goal as well. Same thing against Chelsea in the 1-1, where him and Rashford ran through. He pressed Jorginho, and then Sancho scored. Obviously, Rangnick, he was a big fan of Jadon Sancho as well. Then you thought, okay, the 2021-22 season for Man United overall was a horrific season, but he thought Jadon Sancho would kick on, especially with the acquisition of Erik ten Hag, who is a possession-based manager. And then that was being shown in the 22-23 pre-season when Marcus Rashford was being reborn, you could say. Anthony Martial and Jadon Sancho, they were all doing very well. Van de Beek as well. We were seeing that Ten Hag style of play in pre-season, and Jadon Sancho was one of the shining lights in that system as well. Then obviously Jadon Sancho, he started the season off very well. In the third game of the season as well, I think it was the third one. Jadon Sancho scored against Liverpool in a 2-1 win where Marcus Rashford scored the winner. Then, obviously, Jadon Sancho, he had some personal stuff that were going on about some close people of his passing away, unfortunately, and then Ten Hag gave him 3 months off, which was the right decision because obviously that such things can affect a player's mental health. And then by the time he came back, obviously he was okay. Like, to be honest with you, he wasn't anything special, but he wasn't horrific either. But by that stage, Eric Ten Hag had already abandoned his style of play, his philosophy, because obviously he didn't think that the Ajax way could work for him. And then he reverted to a transitional style of play, which is something that Eric Ten Hag never coached in his life. And obviously, Jadon Sancho, that's not the style of play that he is very, very good at because obviously he's not extremely fast. Pace is not one of his strengths in the game. Then obviously that season, that ended. Okay, you think, all right, Jadon Sancho, you had 3 months off, you were training in the mountains, you came back, you were all right, now it's time for you to show us what you got, right? And then obviously in pre-season, again, he had a fantastic pre-season. He was playing as a false nine. In my opinion, he was by far our best player in that pre-season. The only ones that could chat to him, you could say, is Kobbie Mainoo. And yeah, I mean, look, first game of the season, he was benched for Wolves. And then, in my opinion, when he came on, he was again our best player. He made a bit of a difference, you could say. And then again, he was benched for Tottenham Hotspurs and he was benched for a different game as well. I think it was Brentford. And then here's the big one. He was in the reserves for the Arsenal game. And then obviously you have players like Johnny Evans, you have players like Hannibal Mejbri, etc. on the bench. And Jadon Sancho essentially was said about by Ten Hag. He picks players based off training performances, basically saying Jadon Sancho did not train as well as those other players, which obviously Jadon Sancho, he took it to heart. He made a tweet basically calling Ten Hag a liar. And then obviously Jadon Sancho refused to apologise, which led to him being an outcast at Man United, being forced to train with the kids, and then obviously leading to him moving out in January, where obviously he went to Borussia Dortmund and he ended up in a Champions League final. Now, obviously, he came back in the 24-25 season. You could say, okay, Jadon Sancho, his career at Man United is done, especially after Ineos basically said Eric Ten Hag is here to stay. Obviously, that meant Jadon Sancho, he's not going to stay. Jadon Sancho, his last appearance was the Community Shield final against Man City, where he ended up missing a penalty. Many people believe that he did it on purpose. Personally, I just think it was a badly executed penalty by a player who doesn't really want to be at the club and knows the club doesn't want him to be here. So I didn't really read much into that penalty miss. And yeah, I mean, he did end up eventually just going to Chelsea anyway. And to be honest, he had a good start. And then after that, he was average to below average to above average. Not very consistent from Jadon Sancho, to be honest with you. Now, let's think about the pros and cons of if we decide to keep Jadon Sancho, or, which is probably the more likely outcome if he ends up staying, if no one comes in for him. Okay, obviously Borussia Dortmund are now in for him, so this kind of changes things, but let's just look at the pros and cons. Now the pros is only 1 year left on his deal. Okay, so if he doesn't work out, he's gone at the end of the year anyway. Now Borussia Dortmund, obviously, I don't even know what exactly they're looking for because it was never specified. Obviously, if it's a low move, then it doesn't really make sense because we might as well just use him because obviously he only has 1 year left. After the 1 year loan, he's gone already. And then if it's a transfer fee, it's going to be a very cheap transfer amount, okay? Obviously, I think he would serve as a very good rotation option for Brian Mbeumo and Matheus Cunha. Let's say one of them gets injured, which is actually very unlikely if you look at their if you look at their injury history, but also if one of them needs to be rotated out because of either lack of form or just being overplayed. Now, he also adds to the squad depth in the 10 position, which I think is very much needed, especially now that Ahmad is very clearly preferred at right wing back. Bruno Fernandes is most likely going to be playing as a centre mid, which leaves Mason Mount and potentially Joshua Zirkzee as the only number 10 backups. But Mason Mount, obviously, he has injury problems, so you could just count Joshua Zirkzee, and you have to keep in mind Joshua Zirkzee is a striker. So you kind of have to sign another 10 anyway if you're not going to sign a centre mid. Now, a con is the fact that he has tendencies to be late to training, which is well documented at Man United, Borussia Dortmund, and Man City. Famously came late in his first training session back at Borussia Dortmund in his second stint, I want to say. In his second stint, yeah. And at Man United, Nemanja Matic outed him and some other players as well. I think it was Pogba. I'm not 100% sure, but I know Sancho was mentioned. And yeah, I mean, look, that would cause problems with Ruben Amorim. Obviously, as Luke Shaw said himself and some other players as well, Ruben Amorim is very strict and he doesn't let anything slide. To conclude the video, what I said is Jadon Sancho, he's probably the least likely out of the bomb squad to leave, aside from maybe Tyra Malacia. And there is basically no interest aside from Borussia Dortmund, and if he doesn't go there, he's going to end up at Man United. And I think under Ruben Amorim, it would be a low risk, but it could give us high reward. And then also, I think that would be like his first real opportunity at United because of issues that happened in the past seasons that didn't really allow him to have a fair crack at a Man United career. Now I have to ask you guys the question, would you guys keep Jadon Sancho at Man United? Let me know why and why not in the comments. That's it for the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys next time.